Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of the World AIDS Museum and Educational Center's Spotlight Interview Series. My name is Andy Ruffner, and I'm the Director of Education and Programming for the World AIDS Museum. And with me today is Dr. Raquel Lopes. We're always co-stars on these interviews, and we're just thrilled to have with us today Mamie Harris from Cincinnati, Ohio, who started a prevention services organization for HIV. Mamie, how long ago was that?
Oh, back 1997.
About 1997. This is amazing. So I had the pleasure of working with Mamie in prevention planning in Cincinnati back when I was working for the University of Cincinnati, and that's how I met Mamie. So Mamie, welcome, and we can't wait to hear about the founding of your organization IV-CHARIS. So I'll kind of get us kicked off about this. One of the things we're doing today in these programs, we're talking a lot this year because it's the 40th anniversary of the discovery of what the disease that we would eventually come to know as AIDS. So I'm just wondering, for you, what was 1981 like? What do you remember from that time when you heard about AIDS? What did you think about it at that point?
Well, it's really interesting because I was working at the VA hospital, and at the time I was working as a nursing assistant. And all of a sudden we had this African-American male who was coming into the facility, but the emphasis was not on the individual. The emphasis was on the fact that he had AIDS. None of us really knew what that was all about, but we knew that everybody was afraid of him, that when he came in, he was treated differently than any patient that we had. They would bring his food to the door and all of the, what you want to call it, throwaway type of plates, cups, all of that. Only the necessity things were done for him. And at the time, as a nursing assistant, I had just promoted to be a dialysis technician. And so we actually were the beginning of dialysis work. So he had to receive dialysis. And it was such a big deal because everybody was afraid to put him on the machine, because then they were dealing with hemodialysis, blood to blood contact, and so little was known about this disease. So naturally, most of his care that could be avoided by the professionals were given to like the nursing assistants or like the techs to take care of him. And so that was my first encounter and knowledge with HIV/AIDS. And then about 3 years later, around 1983, we really started hearing about it from the faith-based community, because we had Jerry Falwell, who had explained to all of us that AIDS was a punishment from God for the homosexual community, and a punishment for any of us who were favorable to the HIV community. So all of my beginnings for hearing about HIV or for AIDS, at that time the word was AIDS, we wasn't hearing too much about HIV, was negative. So I didn't worry about it because, first of all, we were talking about something that we weren't even involved in as a female, because when they talked about the gay community, they always talked about the white gay male. So naturally, I didn't really get involved that much because I wasn't a white male, I wasn't gay, I was married and in this safe environment. So I didn't really get too involved. I always remembered how that guy was treated that came in and that had AIDS. That stuck in my mind, and that gave me my picture of what AIDS was, along with what had been said from the religious community.
Wow, that's pretty powerful in that you know, I think this is going to be a really powerful conversation when we try to talk about the intersection of HIV/AIDS in the beginning and the responses from the religious communities, because you had many different responses in the religious community, and we are all familiar with the Jerry Falwell, but he was a voice that people listened to. And so there is, however you fall on either side of that conversation, he is a picture in the history of HIV because of who he was at the time he was around. So,
yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that was a long time before you got into opening up for CHARIS. So a lot of things changed in that. So tell us about the birth of that. You know, how did you decide to get involved in doing this kind of prevention stuff?
Okay, so most of my work career was in medical field in the hospital. And then I married a minister, Pastor Harris, who himself had received his sobriety from being addicted to alcohol through a program that he felt the Lord had given him called Sarah. Sarah was a spiritual application for recovering addiction. So in 1995, I had the desire to retire. And he said to me, let's make a deal. You can retire and come home as long as you find something independent of me that you can do so you won't run me crazy with nothing to do. And so at that time was when I was able to talk to Yolanda West. Yolanda West at that time was a member of our congregation. And we went through sorting some ideals of things I wanted to do with women ministries and stuff like this. But Yolanda worked with the infectious disease control. And she said, have you ever thought about working with HIV/AIDS? Well, now, naturally, I hadn't, because here was in my mind was this 1980 view. Even though I'd worked in a hospital, I never had that other encounters. But this was my view of what HIV/AIDS was. Didn't have any idea. I was ignorant around how you catch it. Had absolutely no idea how the African-American community was 50% of the people who were being infected. And so as she began to educate me, and I began to look at and talk it over with my husband, we began to see the correlation between the Sarah program that he has started, high-risk individuals, and the fact that high-risk behaviors, which cause people to be at risk for HIV, was so correlated together that perhaps this ministry work for me would work out. Because what we wanted to do is, I happened to be at his office and saw a video about a young lady named Lydia. I believe Lydia's last name was Scott. I believe it was Scott. I do have the correct name somewhere in front of me. Before we leave, I'll make sure. Lydia Allen. That's what her name was. And what happened in the process, Lydia was pregnant, and in the process of her pregnancy, she had to be treated and given a transfusion, and she became infected with AIDS. Well, her husband was an educational leader in a major religion. So he assumed, when he told the people what was going on, and all this was on videos, captured on video. Jan Stockton actually gave me the video to really look at. And so when he found out, he went to his leader, thinking that he would embrace him and the family, and they would be secure. But what happened is they immediately fired him. They did not want the family to come to the church. The children were not welcome in Sunday school anymore. So coupled with the image I already had, and then seeing this from the church, I thought that I could be the one to bridge the gap between the HIV community and the church. I didn't look at the HIV community as the LGBTQ, I didn't look at that because HIV was non-discriminatory. I didn't look at it as a racial thing because the first person I saw was not a gay white male. It was African American. And so when I began to look at how this was happening and how poorly this child was treated and the family was treated, and Lydia, just before her death, did write a letter telling why they left the church and what had happened. And there was a place called the Lydia's House that Jan Stockton used to run, and it was when children were being infected with HIV and AIDS. So I went back and I talked to Michael, my husband, about what was happening, and we looked at the correlation between what was going on with high-risk behaviors. And then when we saw the numbers that Yolanda presented to us for the African-American race, we started then to, it's strange how when you get involved in something, you start to hear more about that something. And we started to hear how pastors who had members in their church that once they found out they were infected, that maybe their confidentiality wasn't always kept. And so when they would get up from their pew, they were actually noticing that people were spraying their pew with Lysol for fear that somebody else would come behind them and sit down and get HIV or AIDS. And that some pastors, not many, but there were some pastors unaware of how you got it, that if they have to baptize somebody who they knowingly knew was infected, they were putting bleach into the baptismal pool. And that maybe they would not call out the person's name, but all of a sudden, no longer was pastor embracing me, but he was speaking to me from across the aisle for fear of how you would catch HIV. So we just knew this was the perfect ministry for us, that we would be able to bridge the gap so that people would no longer have to feel the pain and the hurt by educating people about HIV/AIDS. Yolanda was tremendous. She came to our church and she educated our community, our church body on how you got HIV/AIDS, on all of the things about it, because we felt if we were going to minister in this area, we didn't want anybody to come to the church and be offended. So what better way to avoid that was to educate all of us so we would understand and not have unnatural fears of something that could not hurt us. And so the people, once they were educated, the congregation was very accepting. Now, we had a unique congregation. Most of our people were not necessarily church-minded because of the background of my husband. We had people who basically had not been churched out. So when they came with their own idiosyncrasies that we all have, their own issues, but they felt free because we had people who had come from the addiction program and places like that. So it's easier to work with people like that. So we educated the church. Yolanda continued to work with us. We did some things with Lydia House. And as a result, and if I get to rambling and you want to break in, let me know. But
no, this is incredible. This is incredible.
Because Dr. Feinberg and Dr. Frame, who were the heads of the infectious disease, found out that there was a church that was interested in HIV/AIDS in any level. And they came to our office after working with Yolanda, and we formulated a very unlikely relationship. And they mentored me. They literally mentored me. They educated me. They opened the door for me to attend the Black AIDS Institute. And I went there. I'm skipping a lot of things, but eventually that's where I wound up at the Black AIDS Institute, which helped me because I had my own issues and fears still and misunderstandings. And there was so much I did not understand about homosexuality. I did not understand. But one of the things that I've always understood was agape love. love in spite of. And what taught me a tremendous lesson was going to the Black AIDS Institute. I had to stay there for 30 days. 90% of my class were infected. 98% of my class were from the gay community. I had to live for 30 days in a room with 3 other individuals. One was a young lady who was infected, another lady from Africa who was mature by now. I'm 62 years old going to this class, the only and the first faith-based person that had ever gone to the Institute. And I was exposed to so much. But one of the things that I learned in the process, there is so much to love about people that if you just focus on one little aspect of what a person is, you leave out 90% of who that individual is. They accepted me with open arms, even with all the pain and the anger that some of them had at the church. They didn't shut me out because of that. I didn't leave gay and they didn't leave religious, but we left friends. And my husband died the year before it was time for me to graduate. I was ready to give up. It was not the church people who embraced the pain I had to the level I needed. It was my friends from the Black AIDS that did that. Phil Wilson is my mentor even till today. We're very close friends. We have a mutual love going for each other. And it's just been a tremendous opportunity for me to be able to have the privilege to learn how to love on all levels and to receive love. Not only did I learn to give agape love, I received the same kind of love. They accepted me. We had a wonderful time, and they encouraged me to go ahead and graduate because I was ready to give up. But they said, Miss Mamie, your husband pushed you too much. He would be so disappointed if you give up now. They helped me to study when I went back that last year. I mean, just a tremendous relationship. And I still hear from some of my classmates even today. And so it's been a tremendous journey for me, a learning experience, because it was a problem for the difficulty I ran into, if there were any, was with the church. Most people could not understand why we had such passion for the kind of work that we were doing. So the assumption was that one of us had AIDS. And so the story would go around town, you know, they're not doing this for no reason. One of them has HIV or AIDS. And so that was the problem there. But over a period of time of me being consistently who I am, collaborating with people, making sure that I never shut the door on anybody, but I treated everybody the way that I wanted to be treated. And most of our work was being done in the jails. So it gave me the opportunity to really bring a different image of the church. People would say, you mean a church would do something like this? They're coming here and talk to us about HIV AIDS. Man, I ain't even think the church would say stuff like this. It really opened the door for me to have the opportunity to touch the lives. We can go into our computer now and see where we tested over 26,000 people with just a few people. Those are lives I never would have touched if it had not been for my relationship with HIV/AIDS, if it had not been for my embracing other people and them embracing me. So I will stop because you're on my favorite subject.
You know, I want to say that I think that you touched on a really good point, is that if the general population doesn't have an understanding of what community, what religion, and what compassion is within that, they have a tendency to be skewed that this couldn't possibly be a church related thing. And in reality, it has always been a religious, spiritual related thing. Would you say that, or?
Well, what I say is religion is what we practice. Spirituality is who we are. And so when we learn to embrace each other on that level, then it puts all of us on an even keel. But if I'm going to judge somebody solely based on their differences in thinking, differences in behavior, differences in who they are, then I shut out 90% of the world. And the more you close out, the less you have in. And so I just learned, and I'm glad that I am who I am, but I do believe that if I had never gone to the Black AIDS Institute, and if I had never had that 30-day period and that 2-year time period with them, that I would not have been effective as an HIV/AIDS advocate on any level. So I kind of try not to get into all the philosophical and theological debates and treat people the way I want to be treated, deal with people the way I want them to deal with me, and believe that God is the ultimate judge of all things. And there are some matters I don't have to deal with because he is the ultimate judge and he is the ultimate thinker. And it says that his ways are not our ways, his thoughts are not our thoughts. So I don't try to put him in a bag with what I think or what somebody else thinks. And it's gotten me a whole lot of love. I mean, the people that I work with, I love the people genuinely, and I have received genuine love as a result of that. I'm 80 years old now, and I still feel like in my 50s because life brings life. When you embrace the life of other people, they bring more life to you. And it's just been a tremendous blessing to me to serve. I don't know what my life would have been like after the death of my husband if I had not had IV-CHARIS and the work that I do and the opportunities that I had to touch lives and serve people. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, no, this is gold, Mamie. This is exactly why we wanted to talk about this, because I think it's just such, you really were and are a pioneer of wading out into this, and this is something that we didn't have. No one else to this day is doing it in Cincinnati, are they? I don't.
No, we're the only church.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing too, Andy, is because of our work and the way we worked and collaborated with others and embraced the ideals of younger people. Now I've been able to transition out and hand the whole organization over to Kamisha, who is doing a tremendous job. She's really doing a lot for us. Sunday, we will be doing HIV testing for National HIV Testing Day, and we'll be doing COVID testing and vaccines. As a result of her energy, she could keep things going. And so, not only was I able to do the work I've done, but I've been able to leave the legacy with her to carry it on, and she's carrying it on in an even greater way. Because with virtual realities and all of these things, you can see I'm not technically savvy. So the organization would literally have died during COVID if it had not been for me embracing her at a younger age, sending her to the Black AIDS Institute, having her learn the process. We could never have done the $1 million, it wasn't $1 million, I'm thinking in terms of money today, when we were testing 1 million. We started that campaign for Phil Wilson, and we would never have been able to do that without youth. They were able to get the bus wrapped up and get the Black Hollywood to come to Cincinnati working with Phil. So, it was some things of wisdom that God gave me that I didn't even realize I was doing it when we were embracing those younger people. Josh Seal, look where he's at today as a result of his time with IV-CHARIS. Now he's a tremendous asset to us because we can bring him to the churches to talk about the COVID disease and try to encourage our people to get tested and give them a better understanding. Because of our relationship with him, we were able to extend that to people in the church. So, you know, even doing that, we're able to leave that legacy behind and keep the organization going.
It's really funny about working in HIV. You know, it becomes like a family. And one of the things that happened for me, Mamie, is that, you know, those last few years in Cincinnati were so hard because of the opioid epidemic. And all the stuff that we were trying to do, and working in the hospital and everything. And when we had the opportunity to move down here, I thought, I'm going to get out of this. And look where I am from it. But I think that's the
it's
thing.
amazing what one conversation can happen.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you should come join me.
Yeah.
And then let me say this, because I believe another thing that helped us to be successful is we became a parachurch. We became a church outside of the walls of the church, which gave us some freedom also. And the fact that we worked within the jail system helped us a lot to avoid controversy with some of the institutional churches, because we were not able to bring condoms, so they couldn't say we was passing out condoms, those things that virtually they were most against, or they could never label us. We had a fine line that we could function in that made us able to be embraced by both sides. And so as a result, remember, Andy, we were first time we got published internationally was working with churches, because we were in a position that we could be embraced by both. And I consider that the work of God, because I wasn't smart enough to be able to do that.
That was a really fun project that we did. And it was really cool. Raquel, it was a research study.
Yeah, I was going to say, talk about that. You know,
yeah,
I think collaboration is the key to our success. And if we can't collaborate and work together, then it's going to be difficult to move forward.
Yeah, no, it was a really cool thing that Mamie took a major leadership role in, of trying to connect additional churches into this work at wherever, and taking them wherever they were at. So if the church, you know, wanted to do HIV testing, they could do HIV testing. But if they just wanted to have some information sessions, we did that. And then they gave us a lot of data, and this team of people that from the university, there was a sociologist, Magda Szlafarsky, worked on it. And then Yolanda West from the AIDS Education and Training Center at that time. These people from these different perspectives trying to come together with what is it like to try to do this work. And we got a couple of publications out of it, and Mamie's got her name on them, and so do I, which is a really cool thing that came out of that. And I think it really was an innovative thing. Mamie and I both did a lot of work in the state of Ohio, across the state. And I don't know, honestly, that there were other faith-based organizations that came close to doing what Mamie was able to accomplish in setting up in Cincinnati around that. And that's what that's what we're here to do, Mamie, in the museum, is to try to really capture these stories, because it's, that's incredible. I didn't know your story until today. We worked together all these years. But I didn't know those beginning pieces. And I think that that's really an important thing to try to get out there to people, about how people did come together on this. And it wasn't always pretty.
No, it wasn't. We had a hard time. I mean, that one time we were accused of, what is that thing that they do where they said people try to turn the gay people straight?
Conversion therapy, yeah.
Yeah, I thought, what is that? I didn't even know what it was, but we were being accused of that. and I don't know where the basis was, but that they had to prove that that wasn't true. You know, we went through a lot because we were not fully trusted by the gay community when we first started, and we were not embraced by the church community. So we were kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. But collaboration with University Hospital, with IDC, with the Cincinnati Health Department, with the Hamilton County Health Department, it legitimized us going to the Black AIDS Institute and receiving credentials, training under the Ohio Department of Health to do testing, validated us, and gave us an opportunity to build a brand. And once we built that brand, nobody could break it because we were consistent for all these years. We've been consistently the same. We insist on doing work effectively, not haphazardly. We want a professional look to what we do. Because one of the things that we were trying to do, even in our research project, was to prove that when churches are given a chance, they can do their work. I am so sorry. I will turn this off immediately.
That just shows how important, and everybody's trying to get to you. Everybody's trying to get to you.
But we were able to show that if you give them an opportunity and educate them, because we even brought in the Black AIDS Institute while we were doing this study with they said she's gonna answer me. And so by us doing that, they were able to train them and educate them so that they could see there was nothing to be afraid of. We didn't get them to go to the degree we wanted them to go to keep it going on, but we did get them to get involved at that level. So yeah, I think what you're doing, I'm so impressed with this because there needs to be something like this. This could be, it reminds me of putting the quilt together and how significant that became and how significant even today that is to HIV. And so I think that we need to have an archive of information around this because you see the same thing that happened with HIV happened with COVID. And it's because we look at life in steel frame rather than looking at it on a long range. You got to bring all that stuff together. If you just look at what happened with HIV and now we have some things going, PrEP and some things that are in the future going to be better, then you forget all the mistakes and all the successes that you learn. And so the next time when COVID came along, it was like brand new all over again. Here we're struggling, trying to deal with something that we should have been on top of from the beginning because we had learned so much from HIV/AIDS. If we had just used the principles that we use for HIV/AIDS, half those people would not have died with COVID. So doing something like this, I am really impressed that there will be somewhere somebody can go back and look and say, oh, okay, so we don't have to repeat that mistake because I saw that and what they did to be successful. And maybe we can do this in the future by just starting at point B rather than going all the way back to point A, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it does. It does.
It makes complete sense because this morning I was in front of a group of people and one of the comments was, you've been around for now 6 or 7 years. In the beginning, most of us were here when the museum opened and we wondered how long it would last. And because of all the work and all the stories and the history and the collaboration, you're still here today. And I think that's a testament to the work of the people who really wanted this to continue and the people that we're connecting with that are providing their stories to grow the richness of the history of HIV, because we've only seen it through one lens, and that lens is distorted in the story. I mean, for instance, your intersection with HIV started with an African American man.
Mhm.
My intersection with HIV started with an African-American woman.
Mhm.
And so, and others, but that one really sticks out to me because she was a mother, she had a child, she had her child, and she didn't know what to do next.
Mhm.
Um, and this is in the 80s when nobody is talking, there's fear, there's stigma. So she felt isolated.
Yeah.
And it is the work that all the community, whether it's in the religious or spiritual or medical or wherever the community is, coming together and just reaching out and saying, I can help you. I mean, I have the answers, all of them, but I'm willing to help you.
Mhm.
um, that I think we're missing in this, even in COVID. We weren't really, you're right, the lessons that we learned from HIV didn't translate well for people.
Yeah. And and I think because when I look back and I think when I went into HIV, I always believed because of the first pictures I got that you had to be a certain kind of person. You had to either be a prostitute, you had to be a ho, you had to be a pimp, you had to be gay. Nobody talked about the fact that anybody could get HIV. I think that was the most enlightening conversation that we had a chance to have whenever we would go to churches to do our educational piece, to let people know that if you don't have HIV, it's just because you were fortunate enough not to run into it. It was not because your behavior was necessarily any different. Everybody, if they were be honest, at some point put themselves at risk if they had come in with contact with HIV or having it. And so it was a good thing for us to at least open up our mind and understand that women who were married were being infected, that women who were one boyfriend, first time they even ventured to have any sexual contact, were being infected. It was not just the prostitutes or the drug addicts or people who they labeled from the gay community. And that was an educational piece for me. It really opened up my eyes and made me more effective in the way that I did education. So these kind of archives, getting these stories out, will help people to see when they see this. Oh, I saw it from one perspective, but this is a totally different perspective, and open up my mind and let me see that, man, how fortunate we were, even as a society, that through our ignorance, it didn't get any worse. But then it was bad enough. But we were just blessed as a society because we were totally ignorant around HIV/AIDS. The things we should have been avoiding, we were not. And the things that we didn't have to worry about, eating after somebody, drinking after somebody, if they cough, everybody running out the room, if they cook something and brought it to the church or brought it anywhere, don't eat that macaroni and cheese because so-and-so made it. All the dumb things we were trying to hide from. But here we was having all kind of unprotected sex, not even thinking about that. But somebody you just met, somebody you knew nothing about, having oral anal sex, vaginal sex, and not thinking a thing about that. But I used to say to them when I was doing the class, and they, well, can you, if we being in here, can you get it sitting on the toilet? And I said, can you answer this for me? Why are you worried about sitting on the toilet? And you just told me how many sexual partners you had and how you got in here. That you didn't even think about, but you worried about now that you're in here sitting on the toilet. So now let's have a for real conversation. And I could get away with that basically because of my gray hair. And so they would let me say things to them that if one of my staff had said, they'd be ready to fight,
Maybe This has been a really, really fast time. I knew this would happen. I could sit and talk with you about these things forever. We want to try to keep this in our format here. And I think we may need to talk more. So we wrap up. I think one question that's going to be on everybody's mind, and I can't wait to hear the story. So that's not a family picture behind you. There's a nice picture of your husband. I see that. But I want you to tell people about who that is in the picture and how you came by it, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, that's the famous Angela Bassett. And the person on the other side of her is my friend Angela. I have the fortunate luck or blessing to be friends with Angela Bassett's attorney's mother. So she is Angela Bassett's attorney's mother. And Angela was in town doing a program for a group of women. And because I was a friend of Angela's, I got a chance to go in, and she took pictures with us. And I got
That's amazing.
I was
That's amazing.
important for a day.
Yeah. You're important more than a day. I'm going to say that straight out very clearly.
All right. Well, thank you, Mamie. Raquel's going to wrap us up here. And
yeah, I want to thank you so much. And Andy's correct. There's so much more that we can delve into. And I think we just hit the surface of the conversation. And I hope that in the future, we might be able to have you talk again in a larger or a longer format. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your pearls of wisdom and nuggets of information, because they were all there today. And so thank you. So as you know, this is the Spotlight series that WHAM does twice a month. And we're so fortunate to do this again on August 18th. And it will be a surprise who we have. So stay tuned August 18th at 5 o'clock for the next installment of the World AIDS Museum's Spotlight series. Until next time, bye.
Bye. All right.